This has been one of those nights where every time I've tried to start filming this review, something interrupted me. Hopefully now this will finally be the take where I'll be able to give you guys the full review of this album. Let's hope and pray. Post Malone is back with his third studio album, Hollywood's Bleeding. Post Malone you've probably heard of unless you just haven't been keeping up with what music is popular lately. He first started to blow up around 2016 with White Iverson, a song that got a big boost at the time on the Billboard chart, even though it had been out for quite some time to that point. And he buoyed the success of that into his debut studio album Stoney, which, I'll be honest, I kind of just thought it was okay. Quite a bit of it felt like elevator music, and although I don't smoke, I imagine, given the title, this is the kind of music for people who do smoke. So for me, the record was just kind of whatever. But last year, I really enjoyed his second studio album, Beerbongs and Bentleys. It ended up very high on my year-end list, higher than I even expected, and it's a record I've continued to come back to more and more and more, just because there are hits on hits on hits on that thing. Post Malone's always been a great vocalist, and he's a great vocalist on that album, but also that record came through with much more compelling production than his first one did. So you might think I was really excited to hear this new record, but to be honest, I walked into it with quite a bit of skepticism. For starters, I was initially a little concerned with the length because it is 17 tracks. Interestingly, Post did manage to keep it below an hour, but I still was a little worried at first. And the fact that he included Sunflower from the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack just felt weird to me. Because I know he did the same thing with Candy Paint on his last record, because that was previously in one of the Fast and Furious movies, but at the very least, Candy Paint to me still felt aesthetically like it fit with the record. It felt like a song Post Malone would make, and it sounded like something that kind of fit together with what else was there. Sunflower to me felt like it wasn't going to have any artistic reason to be on this record other than, hey, it was a #1 single for Post Malone, he's got to include it on his album to get it back on the charts. Not only that, but outside of that track, because it wasn't exclusive to this record, a lot of the singles didn't really hit me right away. It took them some time to grow on me, whereas with Beerbongs and Bentleys, I was immediately hooked on Rockstar and Psycho as soon as I heard them. Some of these ones weren't really grabbing me right off the bat. So I was initially a little worried going into this thing, but it turns out my worry is for naught because Post Malone has this whole pop rap thing down to like a science. Post is someone who just kind of has a good idea what makes a hit and how to make a hit, and he shows that all throughout this record. I think I was also initially worried that this was going to be a kind of weird and pretentious commentary on Hollywood and like a weird direction for Post Malone, but right from the title track, here I thought, hey, it's going to be a full-blown commentary, but nope, it's really just a track talking about how the Hollywood lifestyle can really take the life out of you. I guess I shouldn't have expected social commentary out of Post Malone. But either way, it's a nocturnal song that really takes some interesting sonic twists and turns. There are these slower, somewhat more heavy moments with these trap-influenced banger-like moments. It's very compelling. Of course, I love Post Malone's vocals on this track, and the good times continue on the track Saint Tropez, where Post basically described this as being a song that he wanted to talk his shit on. He mentioned that he doesn't want to always make miserable songs and that he wants to, and these are his words, go buck wild with the boys. What's better than this? Guys being dudes. Okay, not really, but anyway, it's a slower, more spacey trap banger with some very catchy and smooth vocals, though I do have to mention this kind of continues the trend of Post having a weird lyric on the second song on an album. Last year on Beerbongs and Bentleys, Spoil My Night had that beautiful boobies lyric. Now we've got Post talking about Bud Light running through his piss. There's that wholesome content I was expecting out of Mr. Austin Post. In all seriousness though, I do think it's a good track even if that lyric is a little weird. And then we have the track Enemies, a collaboration with DaBaby, whose star has been very much rising lately. The track sees Post reflecting on how the fame has changed him and his relationships. So no, when I say changed, I'm not talking about the face tats. And DaBaby is talking about his newfound fame while sending some warning shots at his enemies. It's another trap-esque cut, but it has a little more bounce and brightness to it. It's still suitably spacey and features Post coming through with these super catchy flows all throughout, and there's a great melody on the hook. DaBaby's flow is a rapid-fire one, and I was a little worried it wasn't going to fit with this track, but surprisingly it did. So yeah, this was a pretty good one. Though we do get into one of the lowlights on this thing, that is the track Allergic. With this cut, which is about a toxic relationship, Post really loved it for how it had something of a doo-wop-y feel. Not sure if I would describe it as a doo-wop, but okay, Post. It feels to me like a more rock-leaning track that has something that feels reminiscent of like Mickey by Tony Basil. Just take that chorus where Tony says, "Hey Mickey!" and then just replace it with Post going, "Allergic!" allergic, and then there you go. Honestly, I'm not really all that crazy about it because some of Post's vocals are fine, but that allergic hook just kind of throws me off. I can't help but laugh at it, which is probably something I shouldn't be doing given the subject matter of this song. And then we have 1,000 Bad Times, where we're staying right with the one-sided toxic relationships. It's another somewhat bouncier song that feels like an interesting mix between some of the rock influence and some of the trap influence that Post has gone for. It's pretty solid, pretty slick. Post's vocals are about as great as you would expect, and while I initially wasn't really all that sure what to think of the hook, I think the chorus is pretty compelling on this one. Then we have the pre-release track Circles, which was probably the only one that really blew me away right when I heard it. Continuing with the theme of heartbreak, it's a lighter song that feels more acoustic and poppy. Immediately when I first heard it, my first thought was, wow, this just seems poised to take over the radio airwaves. And honestly, I'd be okay with that because I love the emotional instrumentals. A lot of the vocal melodies are super catchy, especially on the chorus. I think that chorus is super duper strong, and it's just got this really sad and beautiful vibe to it that I really like. I know some people have kind of been making jokes about how much vibrato there is on the song, but it's really quite lovely. Then we have Die For Me, where Posty brings in Future and oddly enough Halsey to talk once again about a toxic relationship, as you would expect. I'm not usually a Halsey fan, but I actually appreciate her verse because of all the toxic relationship songs on here and in most of hip hop today. It's nice to have one where we actually hear the woman's perspective on things. Also, hearing Halsey fire shots at G-Eazy is sure to give the tabloids a few more headlines. The pop rap feel and instrumentals are pretty familiar for Post, but he's got some catchy flows and some smooth moments on the song. Future's vocal melodies are solid, even though I'm not all that crazy about when he jumps into his higher register. Though I'm not sure if I'll be the only one to say this, but Halsey snapped on here. I always knew she could sing, but her sing-rap flow here is just crazy good. Honestly, it makes the song for me. Like, it was pretty good with just Post and Future, but Halsey really made the song for me. And then we have On The Road, which is neat. Post brings Meek Mill on the song. This could be kind of exciting. Oh, Lil Baby's here too. That just killed my buzz. Regardless, it's a flex song where all these guys brag about their work ethics and their fake friendships, because that's what a lot of the album revolves around, over a trap-esque beat. Once again, another track where they're going buck wild with the boys. It's more upbeat and faster pace and features more of those compelling flows and vocals from Post, even though, again, I'd like to have not heard about him taking a shit here. I get it, he's bragging about his plaques, but I already heard about him pissing. Do you think I want to hear about him shitting? Meek Mill has this kind of off-kilter flow that's really catchy, and honestly, I wasn't too mad at Lil Baby's verse. It was short enough, and the switching of flows was kind of interesting, so overall, pretty good track. Then we have one of the big ones, Take What You Want. This is a fucking crack pairing if I've ever heard one. Post is heavily inspired by rock artists like Bob Dylan and Kurt Cobain and all those guys, but the man got fucking Ozzy Osbourne on his album. I didn't even know he was still making music. What's more, Travis Scott's here too. Look, I love Travis, but if you ever told me last year that Post was gonna do a track with Ozzy Osbourne and Travis Scott, I'd probably ask if you'd been eating bats lately. But I digress. It's another song about heartbreak and toxic relationships, and honestly, I think Ozzy's hook is hella catchy. I love the nocturnal instrumentals here. Post's vocals are once again super powerful and captivating, and Travis's auto-tune assisted vocals actually fit better than I thought they would, which gives the song kind of a hazy vibe that I really like. And yes, because everyone on Twitter's been saying it, I will agree, the guitar solo at the end of this one is fire. Then we have the track I'm Gonna Be, which Post described as a cool-ass record, and it's a song about partying hard and living life, or as Post would say, going buck wild with the boys. It's a bit more minimal than some of the other tracks here, comprised mostly of some light guitar strums and a pretty gentle beat. Still, Post's vocals are very nice, and I think some of his flows are even catchier than usual. It's something of an inspirational song, which is a little bit weird, but the track itself is pretty good. Though, again, we do hit a speed bump with Staring at the Sun featuring SZA. First of all, it's awesome that SZA's here. Second, Posty, did you ask SZA when she's dropping the new album? Because I don't want to rush creativity, but SZA, please, we want that new record. Well, until then, we have this song, which is a bouncy and somewhat tropical feeling song that's about, of course, a past relationship. Remember, if you're going to Post Malone, you're either sad as hell or you're trying to turn up. Honestly, production-wise, though, I just can't help but feel like this song was placed here just so that Sunflower didn't feel so out of place. And look, I do really love Post and SZA's vocal chemistry here, but again, the problem is that I've heard this song already. It's called Sunflower. It sounds almost too similar to that, with the only real difference being that SZA is taking Sway Lee's place, and it's just not all that compelling to me. Speaking of Sunflower, it's the next song, and look, I already reviewed the Spider-Verse soundtrack. I'm not gonna waste time on this one. If you want to hear my thoughts, go check that video out. I do still like the song, but again, I'm just perplexed context as to why it's here. I know it's the hit, get the money, blah blah blah, but it just doesn't serve any artistic purpose here. Moving back to original songs for the album, the next one is Internet, which is a bit different because Post spends this one taking a shot at the internet and social media, especially Instagram culture. Originally, Kanye was actually supposed to be on this, but apparently now he's not. And honestly, I'm conflicted on what to make of this song because it sounds beautiful with this minimal and spacey feel with some swell towards the end that's really nice. And Post's vocals are strong as usual, but the problem is the songwriting is nothing special, especially for something that's trying to be socially conscious. Given that it's just like a verse and a chorus, it's just severely lacking in substance. I mean, sure, there have been some conscious tracks that were minimal that I did like. Take, for example, I don't know, This Is America. But this one just isn't quite as good, and it's a shame because it sounds so beautiful. It's just lacking in anything substantial. Though after that, we do get into the track Goodbyes featuring Young Thug, a single that moves further into the dark feel, talking about a girl that Post is missing. Typical emotional stuff, but I really like Post's vocals here as he comes through with some of the catchier melodies on the record, and he has some all-around smooth flows as well. Initially, I wasn't really all that crazy about Young Thug's feature because it just felt out of place and a little too eccentric for a song like this, but after a few repeat listens, I was able to get past it and it settled in a little bit better for me. And then the track Myself is another calming and more introspective and rather reflective song that really surprised me because it's kind of slow jam-esque and it's dominated by its pounding drums, and it relies more on Post's singing than on rap flows. Honestly, I love the song. Post's vocals really shine even when he starts to reach when he's hitting a few of those higher notes. And even though it's not necessarily written to be a romantic song, it's got a romantic and really intoxicating feel to it. I can see this being a song that I just end up looping over and over and over. And then we have I Know, where Post seems to come to terms with the fact that he really likes someone, but that a relationship between the two just wouldn't work. It's once again minimal and spacey with some of Post's catchiest flows on the album. He rides the much softer beat on this track really well, and it's just got a great emotional feel to it. I personally think this could have been a more compelling closer to the album, but it's still a great track because the closer is honestly not one that I absolutely love, even though quite a few people do like it, and that's the leadoff single Wow. Ironic, the leadoff single to the album is actually the last track on it. Either way, I was actually surprised when I first heard this because given the much brighter feel, it just felt like something so much different than anything Posty had done. Sure, the braggadocious vibe wasn't surprising, but the production just felt more bouncy and kind of poppier than most of the stuff that Post had done. I do think it sounds like he's having fun and there are some nice catchy flows. I just feel like for me there's not a great hook on the song. Like the chorus just doesn't really grab me and pull me in. Overall though, it's a pretty good track, just not one of my personal favorite of Post's singles. So overall, I'm actually surprised to say I really enjoyed this record. I had some qualms going into it, and I can say that as I did expect, it didn't quite reach Beerbongs and Bentleys, which was a record that I absolutely adored from first listen and continue to adore the more I come back to it. But honestly, the fact that this comes so close to that is pretty great in and of itself. I was waiting for this album to fall off or go through a slump or something like that. But even when we got to the weaker tracks, it never really did. It's consistently strong from top to bottom, filled with some varied production that just feels like, again, Post just has a knack for how to do compelling pop rap. It feels like he's kind of got this how to make a hit formula down like a science. His vocals are consistently lovely throughout the record. He brings out the best in all of his features, and even those weak tracks that I mentioned earlier don't really take away from my enjoyment of this album. It's a real nice project, and even if it doesn't quite scale the heights of Beerbongs and Bentleys, it comes pretty close. And I'm really glad to say that Post came through with another great album with Hollywood's Bleeding. I feel like he's one of those guys that I just go into his records not expecting them to blow me away, and they end up being way better than I expect, which is pretty awesome. My favorite tracks from this record, there are a lot of them, so buckle up. Hollywood's Bleeding, Saint Tropez, Enemies, 1,000 Bad Times, Circles, Die For Me, On The Road, Take What You Want, I'm Gonna Be, Sunflower, Goodbyes, Myself, and I Know. And my least favorites would be Allergic and Staring at the Sun. Overall, that's not gonna stop me from saying that Post Malone's Hollywood's Bleeding, surprisingly enough, is gonna get an excellent rating from me. Posty did a real nice job with it, and I'm happy that it's gonna give me quite a few songs that I'm gonna be replaying for quite a long time now. But that's just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it, hate it, or fall somewhere in between that? And what to you is your favorite Post Malone record? I mentioned that Beerbongs and Bentleys is my favorite, but do you think this scales that? Or are you someone that likes Stoney better than both of them? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Let's keep it civil and have some fun. If you guys would like to hit like and subscribe, I appreciate it. If not, you guys know I'm no beggar, so that's cool. I honestly have no idea what I'm going to be reviewing next because I haven't been totally keeping up with new album stuff because of school, but I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of stuff coming out in September. It already feels like a bunch of people are throwing new music out there. So stay tuned for new reviews. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.